Hello everyone, welcome to this session. In this session, I am going to explain about the linear actuators. Those are called as a hydraulic cylinders. Here, the linear actuators are of different types of the cylinders. In this session, I am going to explain the main important types of the linear actuators. Those are single acting cylinders and the double acting cylinders. First, I will take the single acting cylinders. A single acting cylinder is simple in design. It consists of a piston inside a cylindrical housing called barrel. On one end of the piston, there is a rod which can reciprocate. At the opposite end, there is a port for the entrance and exit of oil. Single acting cylinders produce force in one direction by hydraulic pressure acting on the piston. Single acting cylinders can exert a force in the extending direction only. In the extending direction only, the force the single acting cylinder exerts. And the return, it may be by the different the methods. The return of the piston is not done hydraulically. In single acting cylinders, retraction is done either by a spring or by gravity. Thus, we can classify the single acting cylinders as the two types. One is single spring return single acting cylinder, another gravity return single acting cylinder. The first one is the spring return single acting cylinder. This is the sketch of the single acting cylinder. It is having the consist of a cylindrical barrel. This is the cylindrical barrel, and it consists of a piston, and one end of the piston is connected with a rod, and which carries the load, and that is forces during the extending stroke. And here the piston seals are provided in order to avoid the leakage of the pressurized fluid. And there are one port is provided for the supply of the pressurized fluid from the hydraulic system. There is a pressure port, and another side vent is provided. Air vent actually it is here during the extending. Here the air whatever it is present that will be comes out. And here the spring is connected to come for the return its original position during the retraction. When the pressurized fluid from the pump through the direction control hall, if it is supplied to a this blank end of the piston or a piston end, the piston starts extending due to the pressure acting on the piston. Then the extension of this the cylinder will be piston will be taking place, and there the load carrying or actually whatever work is there that is to be done. Then later, when the extension is completed, then the spring by the spring action, the piston will be returns to its original position. That is a return stroke by spring. And like this, the single acting cylinder working taking place, that is the extension by the fluid pressure and return by the spring return. Okay, that is one type of the single acting cylinder, and symbolically it is represented like this. That is a port, cylinder, piston, and the spring for the return. Next one is that gravity return single acting cylinder. Here the return of the piston is taking place by the gravitational force, and that is particularly vertical cylinders this return is to be carried out. For the horizontal cylinder it is not possible. And again the gravity return single acting cylinder are of two types. One is push type, another one is pull type. Okay, that is push type whatever is there, that is push in the this cylinder uh, inside the piston will be pushed by the pressure port. The pressure will be pushed in the upward direction. Okay, that load will be pushed. Okay, the pushing will be taking place in this direction. That is called as a push type. And during the extension, the work done, load lifting or whatever the additional work is there that is to be done. Then later, uh, during the return, During the return, it will be left like that only. There is no spring here, you can observe. Here, there is no spring. The return or a retraction will be taking place by the weight itself and by the gravity force acting on the piston. That will be returns to its original position, and the extension and retraction will be taking place. Another type is a pull type. Here the pressure port is at the rod end side. The pressure port is at the rod end side. Here the force will be acting. The piston will be moving in the upward direction. Therefore, that will pulls this load. The pulls the load in the upward direction by the pressurized fluid during the retraction stroke only. Okay, that we'll call as a load stroke or a working stroke we can call. And here the extending during the lifting of the load, that by the pull it will be taking place, and later when it is left like that, by the gravity force due to the weight what is there, okay, it will be returns down by the gravity force only, and there is no spring acting here also. There is return is by gravity only. These are the two types of the uh, gravity return single acting cylinders. Moving to the next, double acting cylinders. Here the double acting cylinder consists of cylinder barrel and a piston. The pressure ports are connected to both sides of the piston to the cylinder called piston end and rod end. Okay, the piston end and the rod end, the both side, the ports of, for the supply of the fluid will be there. During the extension stroke, the fluid flow is supplied to the piston end port of the cylinder as shown in figure that I'm going to take next slide. The fluid from the rod end port returns to the reservoir. That is returning to the reservoir. During the retraction stroke, the pump flow is sent to the rod end port and the fluid from the piston end port returns to the tank as shown in figure B. By using the two figures, the extension and retraction of the double acting cylinder we can explain. Here, these are the two sketches for the extension stroke and the retraction stroke or a return stroke. Here, there are two ports. One is on the piston end side. This is called as piston end side port, and this is the rod end side port. Okay, on the either side of the piston, this side it is called as a blank end or a piston end. This side it is called as a rod end. This is the rod is connected to piston. That's why it is called as a rod end. Here, during the extension stroke, the pump flow through the direction control hole enters to the this blank end port of the cylinder or a piston end port of the cylinder, which will pressurizes here on the piston, and the piston will be starts extending. The start extending in this direction, and the fluid on the rod end side through the return port it will be going back to the tank or a reservoir. Here the fluid will be present, and that fluid goes back to the tank. That fluid goes back to the tank, and the extension of the this cylinder taking place, which will be the working stroke usually. And similarly, here the all the parts are mentioned, that is piston, rod, piston seal, and pump flow and return flow. The same the arrangements are for the return stroke also. There also the piston, rod, return flow, piston seal, and pump flow. Here the flow directions are reversed. Through the direction control valve, the flow directions are reversed. On the rod end side, the pressurized pump flow is taking place on the rod end side. Then, due to that pressure, the piston starts retracting. The piston starts moving in this direction, and the fluid on the piston end side of the cylinder will be flowing back to the tank or a reservoir. Thereby, the retraction or a return stroke of the double acting cylinder is taking place. And the double acting cylinder is symbolically represented like this. The two ports, piston and rod, these are represented by the symbolically. Other types of the hydraulic cylinders, some other different types of the cylinders are there, and those cylinders I am going to explain in further sessions. Thanks for watching. If you like, share, subscribe and comment.